if you want to. Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and my guest today is somebody who my last guest on my last interview had recommended to me. She is an integrative health coach and nutrition response testing practitioner. She's a native of Chautauqua County, and her name is Jen Overfield. Thank you, Jen, for agreeing to appear on Fresh Perspectives today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, good, good. Now, how is it that you know Colleen?
Oh, yeah. Well, Colleen and I, we met through a mutual friend. And I started attending some of her workshops that she puts on, which I loved. I recommend to anybody. So yeah, we met that way, and we've known each other since and been able to share lots of great information between the things that she does and the things that I do. So it's been wonderful.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with her affirmation cards the last time she was on, and I want her to come back on again because we only managed to get through a small percentage of them.
I know. I feel like anytime we're chatting, I always wish there was double the amount of time because you can just go over so much, and there's so much carryover, between what she does and what I do as far as tuning into the body. And, and like awareness and how you're feeling. So it's neat. Okay.
Now, Jen, tell us when and why you began researching nutrition and natural healing.
Yeah, so I actually had some health issues that had been giving me trouble for about 20 to 25 years.
Wow.
It had been since high school.
That's a long time. Yeah. Since high school.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, and it started out as just some minor stomach pain and that kind of thing, and I figured it was probably poor food choices. And my dad, he used to eat Tums and Rolaids all the time, and so I had gotten in the habit of, having some Tums or Rolaids, and I just would think I had my dad's, stomach, my dad's indigestion. As I got older and through the years, that started to get progressively worse and worse. And I would go to some specialists, my regular doctors and some specialists to try to kind of figure out what was going on. Definitely wanted to look at some foods, acidic foods, those kinds of things. But we could never really pinpoint what was happening. And we would kind of trial and error some different protocols of what we could do to help, but nothing was really helping long term.
Oh.
And I didn't love the idea of taking a lot of different medications, but as I was unable to figure out what was going on, it was kind of the only resource I had to give it some kind of relief. So it kind of progressed like that over the years, and by the time I was in my late 30s, I hit a couple years where things had, in my personal life, gotten kind of stressful, a little more stressful than normal. And as what happens with stress, everything magnified as far as physical symptoms.
Yeah, that happens when you're under a lot of stress.
Exactly.
Trust me, I know.
Yeah. Exactly. So, things were magnified. My indigestion, stomach pain, everything got worse and worse. It was difficult to eat certain foods. I had been again in and out of working with some different specialists. We were not having any luck. And then one day I had stomach pain that dropped me right to the floor. And I remembered thinking when it happened that for years and years we'd been trying to pinpoint stuff and we could never really find anything. So when it happened, I figured it was probably something minor, as far as, a kidney stone or a burst cyst, something that I was just going to have to work through until it flushed out. It didn't. It got worse, and I ended up in the hospital. They admitted me, and I spent about 2 weeks in the hospital trying to figure it out. They weren't really sure what was going on, and it led to a surgery. They had to flush. They found infection in my entire abdomen. They had to flush that out, took out my appendix. And when I went home, while some things had felt a little bit better, I still was feeling pretty bad. And now at that point, I was experiencing brain fog. My hair had been falling out.
Oh my gosh.
My hormones were out of whack, and now it hurt to eat anything. So I went back to the specialist. We were going to take out my gallbladder next.
What was the first surgery?
The first surgery, it was actually exploratory because they weren't sure what the source was. But they flushed out infection, and then they found that they thought my appendix had slow ruptured. Mm-hmm. When I went back for the follow-up, we did some more additional tests and felt that my gallbladder was not functioning and would need to take that out next. But I had not been feeling well for so long, and I felt so, I call it kind of my rock bottom was what I felt physically and mentally after everything.
Yeah, you'd for many years you had been having some milder symptoms.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it got really bad.
Right, yeah. So the last thing I felt like I could do at that point was another surgery, even though, it was supposed to be pretty, minor and short as far as the healing process after. But I asked if I could address it with nutrition first. I had always loved nutritional, wellness practices and natural practices. But as much as I had researched it over the years and I had tried different foods and different techniques, I never had really been able to figure out what was working best for me. So I was like, maybe I need to go see somebody that can really help me figure this out from a natural standpoint first, at least until I'm feeling strong enough, and then can look at surgery or other steps afterwards. So at that time too, I was taking 4 different medications.
Wow.
And I needed to get one refilled. So I had made an appointment at my gastroenterologist. It was a little bit before I was going to be able to get into them. And then I, at the same time, was referred to what was then Barkstrom Natural Health, which I had never heard of before. I didn't realize it was even in town. Mm-hmm. But I was referred to their nutrition program that they had by a friend. So I called them. They were able to get me in right away, and I got started. So that's what brought me to nutrition response testing. I had no idea what it was about. I didn't know anybody that was doing it, and it was strange when you first go into anybody who's been to an appointment. We do some forms of kinesiology, and so we're testing different muscles on the body and responses. So it can be really strange to what we're normally used to in our appointments. But I was willing to try anything. So we got started, and within a few weeks I started to feel a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And I thought, is this placebo? I don't even really know if this is, how could this be working already? But by 3 months, I was feeling the best that I had felt since high school. And by 6 months, I was able to wean off of all of the medication that I had been taking, one of which had gotten recalled for causing cancer during that time. And I was terrified. I had taken it for 20-some years.
Oh, wow.
So by 6 months, I was off of everything. I was feeling great. My hair stopped falling out. My hormones started to balance. I had no more stomach pain. I never ended up needing to get my gallbladder out.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason we're born with those
yeah.
organs and glands, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I always felt, even when we found that the test had come back saying that it wasn't working. It was functioning at 25%, and they consider 30% to be not working. And so in my mind, I was like, well, it's trying. It's doing something. Mm-hmm. And it's so close that I thought, really, if I could just help it along, who's to say? And I really feel like it's my belief that it's doing just fine and working just fine. And but as I went through that process, I learned so much about our food system, things I wasn't aware of in our grocery store, in our environment, and I just thought, why don't we all know this? These are things that I wish I had known sooner. So yeah.
Okay, and then you decided to devote your time to become a professionally trained practitioner.
Yeah.
Did you have to go to a college somewhere for that?
Yeah, yep. So I was trained through, the technique that I do is it's a specialized technique that I learned through ULAN Nutritional Systems, which is also where Jeff at Barkstrom Natural Health, the practice that I was going to as a patient, that was the method that they were using also. So yeah, I started it. It was right around the end of 2019 that I had started going to them and as a patient myself to the office. And around that time, as I was starting to feel better and I was getting so excited because we had just in 6 months helped correct things that I'd been trying to figure out for 20, 25 years. So family and friends had started asking me what it was that I was doing because they could see the difference in how I was feeling. And so I would go into my appointments all, excited and charged up about all this information I was learning, and then I would ask about their conditions. So I would, be asking about things like, Crohn's disease and gestational diabetes and all these different things, and could this system help? And they actually asked me one day, they were looking for some practitioners to join the office, and they asked if I would be interested. So I knew 1,000% I wanted to do it. So I started going to ULAN Nutritional Systems to begin my education. I'm still doing that now. I'm professionally trained right now, and I'm doing the master's training here this year. It starts actually this month.
Okay.
And then also trained through Integrative Institute for Integrative Nutrition for health coaching in that capacity also.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Now, you actually started your practice in 2021.
Yeah.
And in January 2023, what did you do?
Yeah, so that's the most exciting. Yeah, so I started seeing patients in 2021, which has been amazing. So neat to see so many different backgrounds and lifestyles and symptoms. See how this program works for so many. I had known through the schooling that it was possible, but getting to see it hands-on has been incredible. And Jeff, who owned the practice, Barkstrom Natural Health, was looking to transition into retirement. Mm-hmm. And so he helped, I was able to shadow him and learn from him. And in 2023, in January, actually purchased the business from him.
Okay.
So now we operate as Western New York Whole Body Health. Jeff is still on board. He still sees some of his patients and continues to do acupuncture there on a part-time basis. And then we're there full-time the rest of the week. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what is your mission?
Yeah, so my personal mission is I really want to help people be able to get to the root of their symptoms. There were so many years where I knew something was happening and I didn't know what it was. And so our mission is to help them get to the root of that by the natural means, being able to avoid unnecessary drugs and surgery as much as possible.
Well, you started having your problems at an unusually young age, actually.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing, but I guess, it almost seems to me like things are happening at younger and younger ages to people than they used to.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And especially with situations like diabetes, so many of the different medical issues are happening younger and younger. And it's a huge...
and there's more of it.
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
And it has to do a lot with how our food system has changed over the years.
Yeah.
And then the toxins that are right now in our environment. And then also things that are passed down, things things that are maybe happening hereditary that we're not getting that same support that we had years ago to be able to deal with.
Yeah. I know I've been hearing a lot in recent years about something called epigenetics.
Yeah.
Where it's my understanding at this point in time with the most up-to-date research that just because you're predisposed to something doesn't mean you have to get it.
Exactly.
And that they're finding that mothers, just some of the health issues that people are going to experience during their lifetime has its start in the womb.
Yeah.
You know, like what kind of a diet your mother eats, and whether or not your father was a cigarette smoker or a heavy drinker at the time that you were conceived. I mean, way back then.
Yeah.
I mean, and people never used to worry about that stuff, but I think that's probably has a lot to do with it. But it's my understanding that if the mother, you know, if all of the mother's diet and, you know, the father's health habits and all that are really, really good, now, and then they raise the child on a really good diet and so forth, that the bad genes don't have to get turned on.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and I've seen so many people suffer over the years
Yeah.
from so-called genetic diseases that probably could have been prevented.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so
I agree. It's amazing too because just like you said, I'm glad you used the phrase like it wouldn't turn it on in the system, because it's exactly like that. The study of epigenetics, it's amazing what they're discovering.
It's a fascinating
It is.
subject. You know, right now I'm in the process. I'm almost finished with it. I've been reading a book that my brother had bought for himself to read, and then he loaned it to me, and it's called "You Are What Your Grandparents Ate."
Oh,
is the name of the book. It's a really interesting book. You know,
Yeah.
because I think that, you know, food habits tend to get passed down through the generations.
yeah, absolutely,
You know.
and tastes.
Yeah. And you know, like if there's a famine or something when a woman's pregnant,
Yeah.
so that she's not getting enough to eat, that can affect the health.
Yeah, even the eating habits themselves can be affected by how the mother eats.
Yeah.
So they did this study years ago. It was really interesting, but they did this study based on basically how the health of people who were in the womb during the Holocaust.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And what they found was a lot of those individuals suffered with overweight issues. And what they found was that the mother during that time was so uncertain when she could eat and would sometimes go long stints without being able to eat, that in the womb it created this behavior of basically trying to intake all the nutrients possible when they were happening, because you didn't know when they were going to happen again.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you talking about the Jewish people back in those days?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So, so it was discovered that even the habit, like that habit or behavior of just their instinctual need to eat, or how the body was physically going to retain food or hold on to food, was all affected by just even the behaviors themselves in the womb, which I thought was really neat. And the turning on the genetic factors, like you mentioned earlier, they are finding that there's things not only, so aside from the behaviors themselves, but just like you said, if the mother and father are eating well and are getting those good nutrients in the system, and if the child is then able to be raised, and even if it doesn't happen from the beginning, any time that you start to create that more balanced environment, it lessens the odds of those genetic factors or switches being turned on. And likewise, there's some things that can happen that we're getting exposed to or that we're doing that can work the opposite way.
Yeah, now that's something that I have a problem with. Like all of the, what is the name of that stuff, that weed killer?
Oh, the Monsanto?
Yeah, the Roundup.
Roundup,
That so many people think they have to use weed killers and things like that. And, you know, and then there's the genetically modified foods that are genetically modified so that the weed killers won't kill them. And
Yeah.
I mean, people are eating poison.
Yeah, and many don't realize
And
it.
they don't know. They
Yeah.
don't know that it's a poison that doesn't kill you instantly, just because, well, you didn't throw up or something after you ate it or something, you know, that it's okay.
Yeah.
But it really isn't.
Yeah.
So.
I saw a great, I think it was just like a meme that said, we're the only animal in nature that puts poison on our food before we eat it.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
and I was like,
yeah.
that really simplifies the
Oh, yeah, yeah. Because animals in nature, you know, are just going to eat something.
Yeah. And I like to think of it as, you know, it all started in a positive effort to try to create the best produce available or the best foods available to feed the most amount of people. I try, you know, to kind of think of it positively like that. But now knowing what we learned about the long-term effects of those things, you know, it's just sharing that information I think is so important. What that does, that buildup of toxins can do in the system.
Yes. Now, what is nutrition response testing?
Yeah. So it is a process, it's a completely safe and non-invasive way of testing the body to kind of see what's going on and what triggers might be happening that are affecting basically the body's ability to stay in balance. So it uses acupressure points on the body to be able to test things against it and see what's going on. It's a little bit different. It uses kind of a blend of some different techniques and some different sciences, our Western medical science, some of our traditional Chinese medicine, to kind of be able to basically give a way for the body to be able to respond or react to things that we're not aware of that are aggravating. So things like metals, chemicals, immune factors, different foods, and even scars. These are all things that can be throwing the body out of whack. And using this system, your muscle will respond instinctively, and you can use that muscle to kind of test which areas are being bothered and by what, and then what you can do about it. So it's really a neat way to kind of pinpoint. I feel like for years I was kind of guessing, like we're kind of guessing at what it could be specifically. And with this method, you're kind of able to get much more specific about what it could be. So an example I like to share is I had a patient, and I have an example of my own too, but I had this patient who she was testing for a certain metal. It was lead that kept coming up in the testing that we were doing.
Oh wow.
And and lead is one that is a scary one in there. So in the beginning, we don't worry too much about where it's coming from because metals and chemicals are stored in our system because our body doesn't know how to process it basically. So it gets stored in things like our tissue and our bone. And it can sometimes, depending on what's going on in our system, be kicked up into our bloodstream. So initially when people test for those things, we just help partner with some different ways that they can help detox that out. But if it keeps popping up, then we know that it's something that they're getting repeatedly exposed to. So she tested for lead on more than one occasion, so we knew it was probably in her environment somewhere.
Oh yeah.
And so we looked through the list of some different areas. She's like, I know there's no paint chip issue. You know, we kind of tried to pinpoint that way. We couldn't find a definitive one. So I was like, go home and kind of take a look and see, you know, something might pop up in the next few days. So sure enough, I got a message from her a few days later that she was making dinner and she got out her plates, and all of a sudden she realized that her dishes that she had, they had been a gift to her back in the 70s when she got married.
Oh.
And so she looked up that brand of dishes and around that year, and sure enough, those dishes had been recalled for causing lead. So,
oh gosh. So did she get rid? She got rid of the dishes.
Yep. So she stopped using the dishes. Yep, exactly. She stopped using the dishes. She's never popped up for lead again since then.
Wow.
But it's those things that
so she was getting more and more of it.
Yeah, it was recurringly coming up, despite some of the we would do a little cleansing or detox. It would pop back up again. So we're like, okay, this is where we want to look deeper at what it can be. And so, we were able to pinpoint that specifically. Myself, for me, when I was a patient, I remember, for me, I had, because it was digestive for me, and it had been going on for a long time, there were a lot of foods that I needed to work with. And that's what we do in the office. We partner one-on-one with food specifically. That's a huge part of the program. So we were working on different foods and we were doing substitutes for different things. And one of the things that I had cut out of my diet and substituted was rice. So I hadn't had it in a long time. And all of a sudden I keep popping up with it again during my tests. And I was so frustrated because I had cleaned up everything so much. And I was like, how could this still be sneaking in? And at the time, we thought maybe rice flour or rice syrup, it's put into so many foods, so maybe it was something like that.
Like corn is.
Yeah. So I tried to pinpoint further, but same thing. I was like, everything was so clean. Where could it be coming from? So she said, wait a few days, go home, think about it. So I go home and I'm all, trying to concentrate and see what it could be. And I grabbed my heating pad that I used all the time and I tossed it in the microwave like I do to heat it up, because it's a rice bag, and I put it directly on my skin, and all of a sudden I thought, I put a warm bag of rice directly on my bare skin on a regular basis. I do it all the time. I like how it warms me up. I like the muscle relaxation. And I realized it was likely that rice bag that was causing it that I would have never thought about.
Now, was it an allergy to rice or?
A sensitivity, I call it.
A sensitivity?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So I stopped using the rice bag. I use different forms of that now for muscle relaxation, but I stopped using it. I've never had a problem since. But it's those things in our environment. There are these so many little things that could be affecting our health that was, for me anyways, really reassuring to know that for years and years, we did all of these tests to try to pinpoint these, I was so nervous for years that there was something major going on, and my body definitely was telling me that there was something really out of whack. But there were so many little things that I was able to do to help support the system and kind of turn things around. And it had so much to do with little habits, little behaviors. The rice pad, for instance, I learned that anything put onto your skin gets absorbed into your bloodstream.
Yeah, that's what they say about, the experts are saying about personal care products, to never put anything on your skin that you wouldn't eat. Yes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, so, and there's all kinds of things in personal care products too.
It's one of the least regulated industries, out there.
Yeah, so it definitely pays to,
26 seconds is all it takes to get absorbed into your bloodstream.
To get absorbed into the bloodstream. That's
amazing.
That's fast.
Yeah.
That is fast through the pores in your skin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I read a book, one of the multitude of books that I read one time was a book titled Dying to Look Good.
Oh.
And it had to do with stuff like that. And gosh, it had some really scary stuff in it. It's like dyeing your hair, they were saying, could lead to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The
effect of chemicals and metals, and especially chemicals, has such a detrimental effect on how the body works. And there's so many things right now in our environment that we can't always control. So I always like to look at personal care products and things that are in our home as, these are the areas that we can control. So trying to reduce or eliminate that as much as possible goes a really long way.
Yeah, house cleaning products too. Yeah.
And how many are natural that you can use in lieu?
Well, you would be surprised at how much house cleaning I do with baking soda and vinegar and things like that. You don't really have to use poisons to clean your house.
Yeah, and it's habits like that I think for years and years we were kind of, especially for me anyways, we learn these beliefs that are so it's hard to, so things like we need Clorox in order to kill something, or those kinds of things we learn this over time.
But then you wind up finding out that vinegar kills 99% of germs within not more than a minute or so.
Exactly, yeah.
You know?
So those are the things, yeah, exactly. So there's these things that we can do naturally that it just takes that, the knowledge or awareness, and then it can sometimes put people outside their comfort zone to try those things for the first time because of those ingrained beliefs. But it's amazing what can be done naturally. I always say, nature wants to be in balance and wants to heal. Our bodies want to be in balance and want to heal all the time. So every step towards that, is in the positive direction.
Okay, let's move along to things that we like people to know. And I think we've probably already, it's funny, once you get the conversation going, you sort of jump the gun and start telling this stuff before you get to that part of the talk. But okay, you work with the whole body, not just individual symptoms.
Yeah.
Did we cover that, or is there more you need to say about it?
Yeah.
Like they will, like if you've got cancer or something, the medical profession will, if it's a tumor, they'll cut the tumor out and then they'll expose it to like the area to radiation treatments and chemotherapy treatments. But it's just doing something in the area where the tumor is, but in reality there's a lot more that you should be doing. You want to say something about that?
Yeah. I think that's a perfect point with the whole body approach. So there are so many things that are affecting our health, and a lot of times when people hear nutrition, they get nervous that they're just going to have to be told that they can't eat all of their favorite food.
Exactly.
And that food's going to be the only element to it. But there's so much more. So part of what I focus on, because I love food, and
most of us do, yeah.
And a lot of my favorite foods, I was worried about that I wasn't going to be able to eat them, but we focus on how to work with somebody with their current lifestyle, with their current resources, but then not only with their food, but everything else that's going on in their life. Because there can be things like our sleep, our stress loads, our schedules, whether it's work or lifestyle schedules. There's all of these factors that are happening outside of just our food that's affecting our health. And just like you said, whether or not we're pinpointing any disease, whether it's cancer or anything, not only can it be that area that it's affected or most affected, but the body's constantly, it's all connected. So any one area that's effective, it's constantly affecting all of the others too. So it's a matter for us not just pinpointing one or working with one diagnosis or symptom, which we don't ourselves diagnose because we're not medical practitioners, but we partner with people's practitioners to help support those diagnoses or symptoms. But we're not looking just at that. We're trying to get that whole body into a state of alignment. And I like to use, I had come up with this acronym the other day that I loved that was, that we hear a lot about, ab works or physical workouts, and that we want to get good looking abs.
Six-pack abs.
Yeah. So I like to work with the abs too, but in a different way.
Yes.
I like to think of basically awareness, alignment, and balance. So those three things, an awareness of what's happening in our body, what's around us, and then how we can get that in alignment for ourselves so that our body is working to its best ability. And then by doing that, by working together with these different foods and helping detox the body gets really sensitive. And you start to be able to naturally be able to pick up when the body is responding to something positively or negatively. You'd be like, I feel really great when I do these things. I feel really bad when I do these things.
Right.
And you start to be able to learn how much of things that you need, when you need them. When something's going wrong, you start to better be able to pinpoint what it is and what to do. And that's the balance piece. You kind of learn how to keep yourself naturally in balance as best as possible. And I always, there's always a place for Western medicine, our standard medicine, and I'm so grateful because they definitely kept me alive during my medical flare-up there that was the worst. But there's so many steps that we have before that, natural steps that we have control of, and that's what I want people to know the most. Like, you have a lot of control to help support your body. It's just a matter of knowing how.
Right. Okay. The next point is anything can be causing anything. And this reminds me of a scene in a movie that I watched one time. This man's wife was dying of cancer. And, they literally had a hospice nurse actually living with them. And he wanted to take his wife on a day trip to where he proposed to her. It was on a Ferris wheel. And anyway, she got so nauseous after a short period of time that they weren't able to go all the way, and they went back home. So he brought her in the house, and the hospice nurse said, "This is one thing that you have to remember when somebody is in your wife's condition, that anything can happen at any time." And that's what this reminded me of when I was reading that, where you had written that.
Yeah.
But this is where anything can be causing anything. So comment on that.
Yeah. It really, and it is kind of twofold, like you mentioned. But anything can be causing anything. So there's so many times where, like a headache, for example, that's one that we all recognize. A headache can be a symptom of so many different things. It doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with your brain or there's something wrong in that area. Similarly, with all the other areas in our body, with all the other symptoms that are going on, there were so many times for me, and I know for so many others, some of the symptoms, any symptoms concerning, but some of the big ones, especially for me when my hair started coming out in those extreme chunks, it was really worrisome. I thought something is really out of whack, and I started kind of jumping to definitely worst case scenarios of what it could be. What I like to reassure people to, and not to say that we don't want to address those, we absolutely want to address those symptoms no matter what, but it can be so many different factors. It's not necessarily that worst case scenario that WebMD or Googling it is telling us. It can sometimes be, like I said, with the rice bag or the dishes. It can sometimes be any of these little things that are throwing our system off and not necessarily causing a diseased organ or area, but just an upset where things can't work like they want to.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's so much stuff that people have reactions to.
The other thing about the movie scenario that you just were saying, what I liked and what it made me think of was, again, kind of that whole body approach. The fact that he was taking his wife on the Ferris wheel or the trip. There's so many factors of, especially our emotional health. Mind, body, spirit, all of that goes together that affects our physical health also. So many things that, not only like stress, we talk about it being damaging, but those positive things really help uplift the body and can open it up to healing also.
Well, he eventually, before the movie was over, he wound up buying a Ferris wheel and setting it up in the backyard so that they could go on it. It was a really good movie. I'd like to see it again. Okay, did we already address the role of environmental toxins?
I think we touched on it, but yeah, there's, just to kind of recap, there's so many different things right now, and a lot of times, especially with food or with any symptoms, people tend to think like, what's wrong with me? When they're trying to work on food and something's not working, they get down on themselves about their own behaviors or habits. And there's so many things that right now are in our food system that can be causing extra cravings. It can be causing
they're making the food addictive.
Yeah, and so there's habits that people really get down on themselves about, but part of that are things that they're not aware of that are in there. And so not only with our food, but also with, like I said before, our environment themselves. So things that we're getting exposed to in our water, in our air, some that we have more control of over others, but all ways that we can help detox the body. And heavy metals and chemicals can cause a lot of different issues and diseases and that kind of thing. So it's really important to be able to know how to be able to keep your body flushed of those things and working well, and how to avoid them so that you can feel your best.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say trigger foods.
Oh, yeah.
How do trigger foods and damaging ingredients affect the body?
Yeah, so trigger foods, again, people worry, I think, are hesitant to start wanting to work one-on-one with nutrition because they're afraid that they'll, like I said before, have their favorite foods taken away. There are some that we know, definitely sugar is a huge factor. So there's some foods that we know cause disrupt in the body. But trigger foods can be not just those foods, it can even be health foods. So our bodies are so unique. So one set of nutritional values or a diet or whatnot isn't necessarily going to affect one person like it does another.
No.
And so when I say trigger foods, it's really a matter of figuring out how the body responds to certain foods for you yourself. So for me, there's certain foods that I know that I'm better off staying away from, and I've found great substitutes to be able to have so I don't feel deprived of them at all. But there's others that maybe I can have in moderation. The big offenders that I would say universally for people are going to be things like our high amounts of sugar, especially refined white sugar.
Monosodium glutamate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. I cannot eat kiwi fruit.
Oh, really?
I literally, a half an hour after eating, well, I haven't eaten it in years, but this is the first couple of times it happened, I didn't realize it, and wound up figuring out that I was allergic to kiwi fruit because about a half an hour after eating it, I would start to feel nauseous, and the nauseousness would just keep increasing and increasing and increasing until I'd throw it back up. And I'm finding out now that a lot of other people are allergic to kiwi fruit.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And vinegar is another one with me.
Oh.
For some reason, I don't know why, but if I try to eat a pickle or something, sometimes some of that vinegary stuff will actually, for some reason, get in the airway and stop me from breathing.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I think I could choke to death on a pickle.
On a pickle. Yeah, and it's interesting because you mentioned that you clean with apple cider vinegar.
No, I use the white vinegar.
Oh, white vinegar.
Because, it's too expensive. Yeah, I can use it for house cleaning.
Yeah.
I just can't eat it.
Yeah, so that is a great, I like that example because vinegar in general, so a food like that, especially kiwi, somebody might not realize at all that that's an offender. But apple cider vinegar itself, even though I know that's not exactly what you were cleaning with, but a lot of, it gets a lot of positive news out there about how much it can benefit the body. And so there's some people who enjoy taking a shot of apple cider vinegar, or they'll put it in their dressings or whatever. They might use it a lot. And that's what I find with some people with their food, is that there's certain foods that we are educated on that are really good for us in general. And so we start consuming them. But some people might be, just because just because the majority it might be okay with, it doesn't mean it's okay for everything. And so something like that, for you, it's when you can take what we would think might be a superfood and accidentally be, causing our system some kind of stress, and being able to pinpoint that was amazing. Or like you said, you can clean with it but not eat it. There are so many foods that they change their
when they get inside the
chemical
body.
dynamic change. Yeah, not only when it's absorbed or digested, but also how it's prepared. So whether it's raw or it's cooked. I have people who can eat eggs one way, like maybe hard boiled, but they can't eat them scrambled. People who can consume broccoli maybe cooked but not raw. There's even factors like that, little nuances that are fascinating. You can go down a whole rabbit hole of, but
yeah. I know. It's funny, but now in my particular case, I only drank. Now we've been hearing for years that supposedly red wine is good for heart health, right? And I have had these instances where, maybe somebody would offer me a drink. Now I only drank alcoholic beverages for just a few short years when I was first old enough, and wound up deciding I didn't want to do it anymore because I didn't like the way it made me feel.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt mentally off after a couple of drinks. And so anyway, people will try to tell me, oh, it's good for you.
Yeah.
And then why do I feel so lousy? But now I'm finding out they're saying not only should a woman have one serving a day, and men too, but now they're wording it, if at all.
Yes.
Kind of like it's been found out that you're better off if you stay away from it altogether.
Yeah. Yep. I just saw an article on that the other day, and I can't remember. I'll have to send you the link because I can't remember off the top of my head. But that is what it was about. It was these studies that were done however many years ago. I want to say it was maybe 30 years ago, but I don't know exactly. That they're now finding that is not necessarily the case. And maybe that's a factor of how our systems are right now versus how they were back then. But yeah, the if at all, I think, is really important because some people are very sensitive to it. Especially they're finding now links to neurological issues that are happening.
Well, drinking alcoholic beverages contributes towards having a stroke.
Yeah. Yep, it can be linked to a lot of different things, and the alcohol, and then there's so many things. That's one of those ones where it is. Is it beneficial, one or two, or however many, or is it going to be better for you just to not have it all? As a general rule of thumb, I like to think of any foods in moderation. So anytime you start to get extreme in anything, regardless of what it is, you're going to get a buildup of certain nutrients and a lack of others. And so that, for me, on my personal wellness journey, was something I really had to be aware of, because I would think I was eating healthy food, but I was maybe eating the same things and maybe too much of them and not enough of others. And that can cause things too. Yeah,
so many things like soda pop, I found out, is really bad. That's another thing that I quit drinking. Yeah. Seriously, once in a great while I will have some juice if I'm eating at a restaurant or something.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of the time, all I drink is water and herbal teas.
Yeah.
I could not drink coffee. I could never drink caffeinated beverages. Because I would have really bad anxiety caused by the caffeine.
Yeah.
I remember one time a few years back, some friends of ours gave us one of those big chocolate bars. And it was labeled as something like 90 or 92% cacao.
Oh,
Well, my husband and I each ate just 2 little squares of that at lunch one day. Lunch, not late in the day, not in the evening. Lunch. I had those 2 little tiny squares of that really dark chocolate. Well, apparently, the higher the cacao content, the higher the caffeine content. I did not get a minute's worth of sleep that night.
Oh, so many hours later.
Even though it was at lunchtime, I had that dark chocolate.
Yeah, and just like we talked about with the cleaning products, us feeling like we needed certain cleaning products to be able to get everything. We also have this kind of theme happening in our culture right now, that we need caffeine to be able to, coffee or caffeine or whatever, to be able to function or work our best. But what a lot of people aren't realizing, myself included, is how that was actually working against me, or how that works against us. Not only the caffeine standpoint, especially in the soda, not just the caffeine standpoint, but the sugar content in that. But caffeine itself and sugar together have like an immediate effect on our anxiety. And so it's funny, we might be overwhelmed with some things happening, so we drink the coffee or we drink the soda to give us the energy to get through what we need to get through. But what can be happening is we're overloading our system, and then we're creating more stress on our body, and we're making ourselves more anxious. Yeah, it's interesting. And once you stop or kind of cut back from that, when you reintroduce it, you can feel the effects of how that's going to affect your body. And again, you can kind of see what you're good with and what you're not. But yeah, caffeine and sugar itself is one of the biggest offenders. It's been linked to so many diseases and dysfunction in our system. And it is put right now into so many foods.
Oh, I know.
So the amount that's in caffeine, but even condiments and dressings and foods that we don't even realize or think to look for.
Right.
So that would be, I think, one of the biggest takeaways for anybody watching, is to kind of look at the foods that you have in your house, check out the ingredients, look for the hidden names of sugar, which can be called so many different things, and work on cutting those out with cleaner ingredients, things that you recognize.
Well, a couple of other things about soda pop. One of them is since it's a carbonated beverage, it causes a deficiency of oxygen in a person's body, and also it contains, a lot of them contain phosphoric acid, which is the active ingredient in toilet bowl cleaner.
Isn't that crazy?
I know. And then another thing that I just found out about just a few years ago is, I hadn't eaten meat since I was 25 years old anyway, but now I'm finding out that things like processed meats, like salami and hot dogs and lunch meats and things like that are as toxic, according to the What the Health DVD video says. Those things are just as toxic as cigarette smoking and asbestos.
Yeah.
So
again, it's those especially when it comes to those additives, preservatives, the things
something
that are
called nitrates.
Yep, all of those things. I found, for me, I could feel the difference, and can still feel the difference between eating organic, as much organic, especially I try to do local when I can, but making that switch just to organic foods, whatever it is that you're eating, you'll notice a big difference over time, even with your taste buds. That reduction of sugar, if you can make it, and then that switching to organic, you're going to notice right away. And you can notice it in, again, like neurological symptoms. You can notice brain fog. A lot of brain fog is reduced when you're able to make that switch. And a lot of people are nervous about it because they're worried about the cost involved in switching to those foods. But the long-term benefits, to me, I feel like you end up saving money, because for one, you're not dealing with the medical backlash, whatever your system's being thrown out of whack. But also, your eating habits become different. And so people stop craving what they used to be craving. They're not
That's
eating in the amounts
That's true.
that they
You
want.
stay away from something for
Yeah.
a few weeks and you won't crave it anymore. Yeah.
Yep. And you're not eating as much of things. Like that amount will start to change. So there's all these different things where, especially with sugar, not only do you crave it, as soon as you get it into your system, you'll crave more of it. And there were studies now that are finding that sugar itself is 10 times more addictive than heroin. And so
Wow.
and so
Wow.
when people are down on themselves about how they can't stop eating these foods, I always try to like encourage people to be compassionate with themselves, because our food system is different right now. And from a nutritional level too, the amount of nutrients in our food are so much less than they were years ago. So we have less nutrition and we have more sugar, and it's causing a lot of those cravings. And when you can get that out by eating organically, by lowering that sugar amount, those cravings will subside. You won't want to necessarily eat certain things. And again, like the amount is less. People always say to me, they're, and not to say that I don't treat myself to things here and there, I definitely do, but I was a huge sweets lover. And like it would be the thing that people would gift me with on special occasions, you know, so especially chocolate.
Yeah.
But there's so many things now that I don't even crave as much, or I don't necessarily, it's not a point of trying to stay away from it. It's not like a struggle for me as much, because it's not in my diet on a regular basis. And now when I have it, I feel the after effects. So it stops making it a treat.
Yeah,
and it stops
you notice
tasting
it.
good.
You notice it right away.
Yeah.
If you've been eating purely for a long time, you'll feel super duper good.
You do, yeah.
But then, if you've been doing that for a long time, as soon as you eat some of that other stuff, all of a sudden, you notice it.
Yeah.
Now, there is one last question I need to ask you, and that is to tell my viewing audience how they can get a hold of you.
Oh, sure, yes. So I can be reached by phone at the office. So the office is Western New York Whole Body Health, and we're located in the Medical Arts Building on 500 Pine Street in Jamestown. The phone number is 716-665-5015. You can also find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Western New York Whole Body Health, and also a Facebook group and YouTube channel that are both entitled Clinical Nutrition with Jen Overfield. So any of those avenues are great. You can message us directly on Facebook, call the office. You can email also. Our email and website are the initials of our business, so it's WNYWBH at gmail.com. Or just .com for the website. And so you can get a hold of us those ways. And we also offer workshops on a monthly basis. We have a couple different community events. Like I said, for me, it's important to do kind of whole body health. So we're kind of incorporating anything wellness within our community and kind of building those connections. So we do some workshops, and as a thank you for attending any of those workshops, you can receive a free initial consultation, which is normally, I think, about $145 right now. It's a 3-hour process, 2 appointments for half hour or hour and a half, and you can get that completely free. You can get a little testing to see, a testing example to see what it's like, information on if you are interested, and then you can get that to see if it's for you. So those are some great tips to come in and check it out if anyone's interested.
Okay, thank you so much for appearing on Fresh Perspectives today. And I will see those of you in the viewing audience on the next episode.
Thank you.